Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time coming, but I have a book wrap-up video, and we have a lot of books to discuss. So after kind of a reading slump that lasted way too long, I have some really good ones here to discuss. And these aren't all the ones that I read. I read a couple other books, and I'm going to leave them in a blog post down below so that I'm just not rehashing it. But I read those for my blog. I'm part of a Celebrate Lit team, and we just read and review books for different people, and in exchange we get a free book, basically. We're going to talk about the first one, which is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And after kind of the devil in arithmetic, I wasn't sure if I was to expect something like that or When Hitler Killed Pink Rabbit and be pleasantly surprised. It was kind of a little bit of both. I had a high expectation that wasn't met, like in The Devil with Arithmetic. But because I had that, I even dropped my expectations, and it flipped when something like When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit, and I had a very moving experience. I thought I knew what this book was going to be about, and it wasn't that at all. And this is very well done enough that I actually am going to hand it off to my 12-year-old son because I really think he will enjoy it, and it was done very well. It does a great job of putting a haunting story without dragging you through mire. And I really appreciate that, especially because it is such a hard topic to approach with youngers. It kind of shows me that you can portray horrors without bringing in dirt and grime into the picture. Kind of like how The Outsiders really portrayed like this harsh reality of gang life without any language in it. It did a phenomenal job. There was no language, but it really did a great job. I'm babysitting today, y'all. There's just, when I can film, I film. So it is what it is. Hashtag mom life. But anyway, I gave this one 5 stars. So I had a high rating for it. But I keep looking out the window. I'm sorry. I know any minute the mom's going to come for the one girl, and I'm going to be caught unaware, and she's going to walk in with the camera on me, and that's just going to be awkward. But I'm not sure how much edited and pieced together this will be, but this was a 5-star read. It was what I would call very haunting and very moving, and it was done very well. Okay. All right. The next book that I'm really excited to talk to you about is Jamie Jo Wright's Haunting at Bonaventure Circus, or Bonaventure Circus, or some kind of pronunciation thereof. So I gave this one 4 stars, and so it wasn't a 5-star read for me, and which is kind of surprising because I really expected it to be a 5-star read. Now, I want to talk a little bit about it. It had nothing to do with our major plot line. The major plot line I assumed was going to be kind of a mystery take on The Greatest Showman. And when I read the first, they're not really chapters. You have you have 2 dual timelines, one in 1928 and one in present day. And the first one I read, which I think takes place in present day. No, I'm sorry. It takes place in 1928. I read it and I'm like, oh, this is going to be kind of a Phantom of the Opera twist retelling. And to fully understand that, you have to know that back in my teens, Phantom of the Opera was like my favorite thing ever. I would listen to the soundtrack all the time. I loved the movie. I even had autographed copies from Emmy Rossum and Gerard Butler because I loved it so much. So when I started reading this, I was over the moon as to how this was going to go forward. And recently I shared kind of the whole Phantom of the Opera experience with my two eldest when YouTube had this like 24-hour 24-hour special of like this particular, I'm stumbling over my words, but basically they put on this production, Phantom of the Opera, for 24 hours, and my 13-year-old absolutely fell in love with it.
Best movie ever. And that will be my best or my favorite version of Phantom of the Opera.
So, as you can see, when I started, by the way, I'm done reading this if you want to read it before Best and More takes it home. It's her book. So let me finish telling people about the book and then you can take it and go read it. So, Phantom of the Opera. Yes, and I read it and I'm like, this has all of the makings of a Phantom of the Opera meshed with The Greatest Showman. This book is going to be amazing. And it has a lot of similarities to it, but our present day main character is a single mom and you know, our main character, our main hero, I guess is what you could say, isn't kind of like your typical main hero. He's kind of a biker guy, which was, it was a nice little twist on like your average, I don't know, it was just very unchristian like type of main character. You know, it wasn't a clean-cut rancher stepping out on the scene and just everything perfect about him. He's the kind of guy that I don't typically gravitate towards at all. Exclamation point. So I really liked that little spin on it, and I need a drink. It's just coffee, I promise. But yeah, so I kind of thought this was going to be a very interesting twist, but our main character and then the secondary main character back in time, just their love story, romance type of thing just wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't flow as well as I thought. If you were to have it in there, it should. I hope that makes sense. So that was kind of like a drop in the stars for me, just because I, instead of like wanting more and more and then completely missing the romance part of it, which I kind of tend to do because I'll be so wrapped up in the main story, I didn't. It kind of felt stilted within the book, in my personal opinion. Why I really liked it is, of course, like I said, the Phantom of the Opera kind of aspects on it. And even in one point in here, her ringtone is Phantom of the Opera. So that was a really good kind of experience. I can't talk too much about this book because there's just so much in here that I'm afraid I would give so much away. I will say, did not expect the ending. I did, but I didn't. Which means she did a phenomenal job. If I can't kind of like predict where it's going, that author gets 2 thumbs up for me, because typically I kind of know where it's going. I did kind of suspect, and it was like hindsight. I was like, I should have seen that coming. Again, I can't really talk about it because I'm afraid too much of giving too much away. So the ending. Okay, so because you have 2 mysteries here, I don't know how to talk about it. It played a huge part in the book, or in my experience of the book, because again, something wasn't expected, but I thought I had it figured out, and I wasn't completely off, but I was completely off. So, like, how do you talk about that? I don't know. It's kind of the whole crawdads experience, because I needed to talk about it. I needed to know. I needed to talk with somebody to be like, didn't you see it coming? Because I kept talking to people who had no idea it was coming. Anyway, so really good, y'all. This is really good. But it did have a 4 stars, and honestly, as I'm talking more about it, I'm like, oh, probably just bump it up to 5, because no book is perfect. Even though there was this thing that you had a problem with, just the whole romance type of thing, it really wasn't like diminishing of how great a book it was. So I don't know, maybe it does deserve 5. Another 5, I would say this list didn't quite make 4.5 over, but it was between a 4 and a 4.5. This is another one that's going to be really hard to talk about without giving too much away. But this is one of the ones that I requested from Celebrate Lit to do a review on. And the reason why is because it takes place in Indiana. It takes place in La Porte, Indiana, which I have no idea where that is in relation to me. I know I looked it up at some point, but gone. And this is based on something that truly happened. Interestingly enough, the author talks about visiting this place and how wonderful everybody is and how proud they are of their town, except for this little blight basically on it. And I thought that was so cute, especially coming up here to Indiana. That is such a Hoosier thing. Many Hoosiers up here are very proud of their town and their heritage, except for this little blight. So I just thought that was so adorable. Some of the writings in here, I honestly did not expect to give this such a high review, because as I'm reading the book, I'm just so frustrated with our main character. Like, everything is completely obvious to me, and she's just, I don't know, like this. Just, she refuses to see what is right in front of her eyes. And the more the book goes along, now I'm starting to doubt everything that I have assumed. But then I keep going back to, no, I have it right. And that was really well done by Liz Tolsma. This is a series, so this is the True Colors Historical Stories of American Crime. I'm actually going to be trying to get the rest of the series because I'm really curious now as to what else goes in here. Insofar, okay, so with this story, basically, our main character's sister has some kids and runs a farm, and basically she really struggles to maintain this farm. So she has these ads that she puts out for husband, you know, if it's kind of like mail order husband, basically. But they commit to financially helping out with the farm while these men start disappearing. Our main male character basically is trying to find his lost brother, who went to this woman's place and disappeared. And so he's trying to find the answers. He's trying to figure out where he went. The sister is kind of just standing up for this woman that is trying to get a husband, basically. And there's a lot going on. And it's just, you're trying to figure out what is going on, what has happened. Finally finished But Don't All Religions Lead to God by Michael Green. This is a nonfiction book that took me way too long to read. And it was because it has so much that I needed to process. And that's usually why I can fly through a lot of books. If you notice, they're mostly fiction. The nonfiction ones, I just take little bite-sized, tiny bite-sized. Sometimes it's only a paragraph. And then I need days in between because I'm just processing it. I'm mulling over it. I'm going through scripture with it. Especially when it's a Christian book. It takes me so much longer because nonfiction is usually presenting a side of truth. And I have to, I need more time is what it all amounts to. Honestly, I really liked how this book went. It lines every claim out there, it aligns with, okay, if this is true, and then this religion believes it, and this religion believes it, and this religion believes it, how does all this align with this insofar as how their philosophies state how things go? If that makes sense. And it's not an easy read. There's just a lot going on in this book, and honestly, I really did like how it presented it until the very last chapter. Chapter 10, where do we go from here? I kept bringing it to my husband because I'm like, I feel like he's being two-faced here. He's saying this, but then he's saying this, which is completely opposite of this, and he's saying both of these are true. It doesn't make sense. And honestly, my husband and I came to the conclusion after kind of going through everything that he just tried to wrap too much up into the last chapter and wasn't very clear in what he was saying. I understand that. I have a horrible time of trying to I just have a horrible time trying to portray myself, or not really portray myself, but I have a horrible time talking deep thoughts and making it accurate. I tend to present myself as if I believe something that I completely opposite of what I actually do. So I actually will probably be going through this book with my high schoolers, and I think it's a very good summary, simple summary of different beliefs, and if we all believe in one God, how would this look like? If that makes sense. Anyway, I really did like it, except that last chapter. I really don't think the last chapter was written as well. Or maybe I was trying to rush it. I don't really know. But I had to keep bringing my husband into it, and we were just trying to piece together what he was saying. So it was really good. And then interestingly enough, my husband brought in a book that he was using for his paper he was writing for school. And he's like, where's that one book you were reading? The religion book. And it was by the same author. So that was really interesting how my husband has another book of his, and it's like, I don't know, it's like 4 inches thick of things like this. So that's just a simple summary of something else he wrote, I guess. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is A Cross to Kill by Andrew Huff. This is one that my mom, when she was here, she left a whole stack of books that we bought at the local Christian bookstore. And anyway, I just have the opportunity to read it before she takes them all back. And this is written by, Andrew Huff is the product director at Igniter Media, one of the largest church media companies in the nation. He also spent 10 years in the church ministry as both youth pastor and creative arts pastor. This is his first novel, and I think he has great potential. I think his second and third novels will actually be a lot better. I can definitely see how this is a debut book. It does need a little bit more polishing. It is very action-packed. It's like reading a Born Identity book. And what it is you have a undercover CIA operative. He was an assassin for the CIA, basically. And he decided he wanted to lead that life and pastor a local congregation. And so he's doing this. But on his last assignment, the gal was in Iraq, about to be executed in front of live TV. He rescued her, but she's obviously a reporter, so now she kind of wants the full story. And so it's just how she and he come across together. Again, it's very action-packed. It's just like reading a Born Identity book. So if you kind of want something lighthearted and enjoyable, this is it. There's a little bit of a mole mystery in here. And like I said, the first one, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. And I do think he'll get better as he writes more. I can definitely see potential here. So there is that. Our family read aloud. We did Patterns on the Wall by Elizabeth Yates. This is a very slow-moving book. This is early New England story about a boy who goes under apprenticeship and basically is a painter and paints these elaborate wallpapers in these early American homes. And he's doing this with this idea to go back to this girl that he has loved from childhood, and they'll get married. But as he grows up, obviously different circumstances. After he is under apprenticeship, he has to build his own name, which is something that I really like, those kinds of stories, especially after reading The Art of Work by Jeff Wines. And he talks about the apprenticeship and like how that was like a foundation for work. And then you can kind of see it illustrated here. But the story is not necessarily a very engaging one. It's a very slow moving one. My husband really enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. But because it just took us so long, it was very hard to kind of like get back into the book. We, about 2/3 of the way through of this 164 page book, so about 2/3 of the way through, we were just really invested in it. I kind of wanted to know the outcome of Jared. And that's pretty much all I could say. Like the younger ones, I didn't really hold their attention. It's more of a reflective type book in my opinion. This is level 8 of the Good and the Beautiful library. Again, if you like to thrift shop or secondhand shop, this has been reprinted. The book I knew it by was The Journeyman, and it was a Lightline Publishing. So up here would be like this little green paper look thing, and it was called The Journeyman. So if you're trying to find things secondhand, obviously it's the same book, it just has a different name. So that's something to remember. But reread this. I asked if we wanted to keep this or pass it along, and my husband requested that we keep it. So obviously he wants to reread that, and the rest of the kids were like, meh. So again, it was a reflective book, so there's just not a lot of action if that's something that you're really looking for. We finished Hittite Warrior for our our ancient history read. This takes place during the time of the Judges, and this is kind of a non-Christian point of view of this time period, which is really interesting to me, especially because we did do Bible in a year. It was not a year. It's taken us a lot longer. And then we went through the Judges and Deborah and a lot of the wars that were happening. And so this kind of gave that point of view as well as story of the world. The rating that everybody did towards the end, I think we all just were invested more and more into it again, but it did have a very slow beginning. One of the children in here are going to be sacrificed, and so I would say like during the beginning, middle-ish part, we were more interested in it, but as it was just kind of got further on to where he's just fighting, it wasn't as interesting. And then the end just wasn't as interesting. It was just kind of like, okay, let's wrap this up. And then the very end was kind of a little bit of an icing on the cake. So I think the kids said about 4.5 stars for this one. So, which is kind of like a high rating in my opinion. Okay, the last book I'm going to be talking to you about is A Haven for Her Heart by Suzanne Ann Mason. This author writes Canadian centered Christian fiction stories, and this is definitely a romance novel, but this was really good and very frustrating all at the same time. So one of the problems that I have with Christian fiction books is that the problems that many of our characters have are that they're klutzy, that they don't have enough faith in God, and they're not necessarily bad or unrealistic things that Christians deal with, but I think it's almost kind of kept us very quiet or I don't want to say quiet, sheltered. It's not that, I don't know, there's nothing for me there to grow on, I guess is what I should say. So, I got to the point where I just didn't want to read anymore. They all had the same plot line. They all had the same whatever. And there just wasn't, maybe outside of a prayer here, going to church there just wasn't a lot there. And in some respects, this has a very similar aspect to it. In the sense of religious content. But this story is about a woman that got pregnant out of wedlock, and her Italian father has her arrested. So back in the day, unwed mothers could be arrested. And she has her baby in the jail, and her baby is taken away. This is all in the back, so it happens within the first chapter or two. Basically, she's ostracized from her family. And she's in church praying, basically just ready. God, what do? I'm penniless. I'm motherless now. I'm childless now. And she's praying all these things when a widowed mother or a widowed woman goes to the church every year and just says, God, just take me. I'm done. I'm dead. I just want to die. I just want to be done with life. There's no reason for living. And she sees our main character on the way out, and it's like, okay, here's a reason to live. And she just takes her under her wing. And the two women open basically this home for unwed mothers, and all of the problems that the community throws at them for this. Those were some of the hard topics talked in this. Another really hard topic is the horrific hospital that she was in, and some of the awful things done in it. And it was all clean. It was well handled. So if you're sensitive to those types of things, I don't remember anything too detailed. There's abusive women in here, or women that have been abused, and there is a prostitute in here. And again, I think all of our characters are Catholic or Greek Orthodox. So there's not what you expect. I'm not sure how to put this, but basically, if you're expecting like a Southern Baptist revival meeting within the book, it's not there. So it's and it's just they're small. I think at one point there is her brother becomes a priest, and this is sad. I don't know too much of his side of his faith and religion. I think it's just kind of a drop in the hat that he is Greek Orthodox. Some of the things that rolled my eyes way too far back in my head over is at one point the house has a flood, and the plumbing is flooding in the bathroom, and our main hero goes in and starts taking off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves, and she's seeing his muscles ripple, and she's like, ah, and I'm like, what? And you just kind of have some of that, and then they're in close proximity to each other, and their hearts are beating too fast, and how are we ever going to manage this? How are we going to handle the plumbing that is leaking all over the floor and flooding everything while I'm staring into your muscle-ridden chest, and I'm looking into your adoring eyes? Come on. Do we have to? Can we just bleh? And another part of this that that's kind of what I did exactly. We have a reenactment of North and South in here. Y'all have heard my ringtone sometimes. I love North and South. We have a riot outside. She runs out to protest, gets knocked in the forehead with a rock, and collapses, and he comes in and swoops her up and saves the day. It was a little too North and South for me. But other than that, I really enjoyed the book. I liked some of the topics it really talked about. Let's see. And another book that I don't have on me, I did talk about it in the last wrap-up video, The Stories That Mind, and how her sister is dealing with bipolar like her mother, and she and the sister, who is a newly widowed, takes care of her sister's son, who is black during this time period. Guys, that book was really great. I will, if you remember it from last month, great. All these books are going to be linked down below for you, so you can go check them out. Check out Goodreads, because that's where I update a lot of my books too. And that's going to be it for this very long video. I'm not sure how much I can edit it out, but you know, when you got me talking about books, I just chit chat and chit chat. All right, my readers, until next time, have another cup of coffee, read another chapter. Happy New Year.